As you may remember from my last video analyzing masks in Five Nights at Freddy's, I left you guys on somewhat of a cliffhanger. The Bonnie Mask in Help Wanted 2 is a major mystery from that game that I think most people overlook or misinterpret. There's a lot more surrounding this mask in the Steel Wool games than a loose connection to the Bonnie Bully. This mystery encompasses both Help Wanted games, Security Breach, Ruin, Escape the Pizzaplex, and Freddy and Friends on Tour. And now, after all this time, the pieces are in place for us. We only need to seek them out. So join me as I journey my way down into madness. Looking at the mask itself, there isn't many specific or weird details that would make this mask special from any other Bonnie mask. The only real detail to note from the mask itself is that it is a mask for the Bonnie character. This will be important later in the video. Outside of only the mask, the text, "This looks familiar," pops up above the mask, and the achievement states, "Lost luggage." A Bonnie mask? From only having this information regarding the mask, I can see how theorists came to the conclusion that this means that the Bonnie Bully is our player from Help Wanted 2, aka Cassie's dad. I mean, this isn't a lot to go off of, and this seems to be clearly related to old lost memories, like the traumatic event that could have started the whole series, aka the Big Bite. However, after my mask analysis from last video, I noticed a very odd connection that completely reshapes how I viewed the meaning of this mask. In the tapes from Help Wanted 1, we learn of the story of a game tester for the Fazbear Virtual Experience called Jeremy. While there are more tapes that mention Jeremy, the main two that I want to focus on today are tapes 6 and 9. Tape 9 seems to be a direct continuation of the story being told in tape 6. Listen when I play them back to back.
I came in early that morning. No one else was there. At least that's what I thought. The supply room was lit. I didn't even notice Jeremy standing in the testing room as I walked past. The supply room was so bright, glowing from all the way down the hall. There was something that looked like a Halloween mask laying on the floor. I didn't understand. Ink must have spilled. It was only then that I heard a shuffle from the testing room and realized Jeremy must be there. I went back and peered in the window. I couldn't see his face. He had the visor covering his head. He had ink spilled on himself as well. The front of his shirt looked black in the dark room. He turned his head in my direction, but I don't think he knew I was there.
This tells us the story of Tape Girl going in one morning to find a Halloween mask, a dark substance, and Jeremy all alone in the testing room. Many originally thought that the Halloween mask that Tape Girl saw was actually Jeremy's face, sliced off using the guillotine paper slicer mentioned previously, and that would explain the dark/black liquid as blood. However, what this initial theory fails to account for is the fact that the supply room, where the mask and blood are found, is brightly lit. If the room is brightly lit, then I think Tape Girl would be able to easily discern between a Halloween mask and a human face, not to mention calling the blood ink. Theorists likely confused this when the testing room, where Jeremy is described to be, was noted as being very dark and hard to see into. So, instead of accounting for the bright light in the supply closet, theorists pointed to the dark room to explain the inconsistency. So, now that we know the Halloween mask must be an actual mask of some sort, two important questions arise for me. What is the mask itself, and why was Jeremy involved with the mask and this supposed ink? Let's first focus on what I think the mask probably is. But for that, we have to look at the Plushkin Patch level from Curse of Dreadbear. As you may recall from my previous video, the plush babies in the Plushkin Patch level wear masks of some of the characters from the Freddy's roster. 4 of the characters were chosen to be represented in this minigame: Freddy, Chica, Foxy, and Balloon Boy. Now I ask you, why would Scott, or Steel Wool, choose to include Balloon Boy instead of Bonnie, which would have completed the original band of characters through the plush babies? I mean, they already had a Bonnie mask modeled and ready to be used for other Curse of Dreadbear minigames, including Trick or Treat. It's almost like they excluded specifically Bonnie for a reason. Maybe because there's some sort of importance tied to a Bonnie mask. Okay, maybe it was just a coincidence to single out Bonnie this one time. Surely special attention to Bonnie hasn't been brought up since then, right? Oh, look at this! Freddy and Friends on Tour. An amazing display of fun marketing with hints of lore as the build-up to Security Breach's release. I'd almost forgotten about you. Let's go see how Bonnie acts in these episodes. Okay, a little strange. He's acting nonchalant and kind of bored at their adventures, unlike Freddy and Chica. And there doesn't seem to be any reason for this given by the show. What about later in the series? Do things change? Oh my goodness. Yeah, as you can see by these short clips, something is off and different about Bonnie in Freddy and Friends on Tour. I mean, why does he seem so disillusioned by the whole chase? And why does his single presence seem to cause more glitches in the later episodes? There may be an answer to his weird characterization in these episodes, but we'll touch on that later in the video. Moving on to Security Breach, we have the infamous mystery of Glamrock Bonnie's disappearance. Once again, Bonnie is being singled out from the rest of his bandmates. While you could argue that Foxy is also removed from the main group, there is zero solid evidence of a Glamrock Foxy existing at any time before Security Breach. Bonnie, however, is confirmed to have existed previously, and a lot of emphasis is put on his abrupt disappearance. This mystery is even followed up on in Ruin, where you can visit Glamrock Bonnie, now destroyed behind the bowling lanes of Bonnie Bowl. Interestingly, he is also connected to the wet floor bots scattered throughout Ruin's environment. When all of the wet floor bots are deactivated by Cassie, Glamrock Bonnie's eyes fade away. By looking at the actual body and surroundings of the destroyed Glamrock Bonnie, we can see that he was attacked, likely by another robot, and green paint was left at the scratch marks. Now, I've seen multiple different theories on who killed Glamrock Bonnie, mostly between Monty and these greenish staff bots found in the grimier floors of the Pizzaplex. I swear, some people will defend Monty to the ends of the earth. But regardless of who literally attacked Bonnie, I think that Glitchtrap was almost certainly the one who ordered to have Bonnie removed. For what reason? Possibly from a grudge. Whoa. Before I get into that, we still have one more small reference to Bonnie. Turning our attention to Escape the Pizzaplex, the latest interactive novel focused on events before Security Breach, Cassie has the option to use and find a Bonnie bobblehead with a hidden key inside. This keychain goes to at least the door behind Bonnie's curtain in Bonnie Bowl, aka the green room that we visit in Ruin. Now, who do we know works at the Pizzaplex and is heavily connected to Bonnie? Yep, Cassie's dad is suspect number 1 to have owned this Bonnie bobblehead. And therefore, Cassie's dad likely had special access to Bonnie's green room. So, what does all this Bonnie stuff mean anyways? Steelwool clearly seems to be drawing special attention to him for some reason. Well, I think it all ties back to Help Wanted 1 and Jeremy. Think about it. After that point, specific focus is put on Bonnie and his mask by Glitchtrap, the Plushkins, Glamrock Bonnie, and Princess Quest 4. And on top of even that, who better to tie this all together than the person who we know is deeply connected to Bonnie? Cassie's dad. We have a mysterious mask related to Jeremy in Help Wanted 1, and a Bonnie mask related to the Help Wanted 2 protagonist in Princess Quest 4, a place associated with Glitchtrap. The Bonnie connections show the importance of Bonnie to Glitchtrap. This was all supposed to confirm that who we play as in Help Wanted 2 is Jeremy from Help Wanted 1. And then we further extrapolate that to Cassie's dad through the Faz Wrench and the use of a Technician Vanny mask. Not enough evidence? It seems like in almost every theory I've released thus far, I've mentioned Candy Cadet's story from Help Wanted 2, and this video will be no different. To break it down to its simplest points, Candy Cadet tells the story about a young woman who escaped a witch but was left with a scar for the rest of her life. This young woman then comes back with age and experience to kill the witch, but instead she meets a little boy who lures her to the witch's oven, and then the final words state the witch would finally have her meal. I personally believe that Helpy is the little boy in this story, making the witch likely Glitchtrap, as he is the other main Mimic 1 branch that we see in Help Wanted 2. But if all that is true, then who is the woman? It would have to be someone who dealt with Glitchtrap in the past, and barely escaped, but then voluntarily came back to try to kill Glitchtrap, only to be lured by Helpy to that very Mimic branch. Now who does that sound like? Now, I know there are almost certainly other ways of interpreting this story, but I feel like these building blocks that I'm using are the most likely answers, since Ruin's Candy Cadet story was pretty clearly explaining Ruin, so why would the pattern not continue when going into Help Wanted 2? Regardless, if I am saying that Jeremy from Help Wanted 1 is Cassie's dad, then what was all that about a scar? Well, in Help Wanted 1, it seems pretty clear that Jeremy had some sort of incident at the game studio, involving that Bonnie Mask, a black substance, and VR/glitch trap, leading to a bad memory. As you may have noticed, we're missing a lot of information here to draw any specific conclusions. What I can say is that it seems that Glitch Trap may have ordered Jeremy to make a Bonnie Mask, but then something caused for an issue to happen where Jeremy either blocked out Glitch Trap or consolidated him to the VR world again, leaving Jeremy with a physical or mental scar in the process. I currently lean on the side of a mental scar, since after Glitch Trap leaves people's minds, their memories and brains appear to be scrambled or lost. In Escape the Pizzaplex, Gregory and Freddy are already good friends, who seem to know each other very well. However, by the start of Security Breach, when they are free of Glitch Trap, they do not recognize each other, and Gregory even seems to have a tough time remembering his own name. This would explain why Remember Jeremy reappears in Help Wanted 2. Glitch Trap, or maybe Jeremy himself, is telling Cassie's dad to remember what happened with Glitch Trap and the Bonnie Mask, hence why the mask looks so familiar to him. Maybe he's been regaining his memories since Help Wanted 1, and that's why he decides to return to the Pizzaplex to kill Glitch Trap. But you've probably heard part or all of this theory so far before. I'm nowhere near the first theorist to discuss this theory. My intention going in was to show how the Bonnie Mask connects more to Help Wanted Jeremy and Cassie's dad than to FNAF 4 and the bullies, and I hope that I've done that. I mean, which option do you think is more likely? That all this buildup in the Steel Wool games regarding specifically Bonnie connects back to Jeremy and then to Cassie's dad? Or that this single Bonnie Mask is separate from all those other instances and is supposed to be connecting back to the FNAF 4 bullies when that hasn't been hinted at in the games previously? I want to know what you guys think in the comments, because I think it is much more likely that this mystery is still connected to the previous Steel Wool games. So what do I have to add to this discussion besides that point? Well, I have come up with 3 additional points that I want to discuss related to this mystery. Number 1. Glitch Trap has a vendetta against the character of Bonnie, or at least he doesn't seem to like anyone playing the Bonnie role after Jeremy. I haven't seen a lot of people talk about how every weird instance of Bonnie seems to be as a result of Glitch Trap. We have the plushkins in Help Wanted 1, the episodes glitching when Bonnie appears, and especially with Glamrock Bonnie in Security Breach. It seems that Glamrock Bonnie was decommissioned shortly after Glitch Trap entered the Pizzaplex. I mean, why are the duffel bag messages still around in-universe if this wasn't a more recent change to the Pizzaplex? Plus, Bonnie Bull hasn't even been rebranded yet by Security Breach, indicating a shorter time period since Bonnie's death. Since it's insinuated that Glitch Trap is also a relatively new addition to the Pizzaplex, if Tales Games is true, the timelines for both of these events seem to line up well enough. This hatred or obsession with Bonnie doesn't really add a lot to the theory, but I just thought I'd point it out as something moving forward. Number 2, Cassie's dad/Jeremy might still be the FNAF 4 bully. Like I said at the tail end of last video, it's difficult to disprove this Bonnie bully interpretation, when all there really is to go off of is a mask, one line of text, and a short achievement. After all, the Bonnie bully's only true character trait is wearing a Bonnie mask, and Cassie's dad seems to have been an avid Bonnie fan earlier in the timeline. While I'm not against this connection to the bullies, I question if that really changes anything about how Cassie's dad acts in the current games. I also wonder why he would then return to test the Fazbear virtual experience if the lost memory that he's referring to was in 1983 with the Big Bite. Any of these interpretations are valid and have their own good reasoning, but until new evidence comes out, I'll be sticking to the one that feels the most narratively satisfying to me. Let me know what you guys believe down in the comments below. Number 3. Freddy and Friends on Tour might not be totally solved by this theory. These episodes seem to be from an earlier time in Fazbear Entertainment's history, especially with the more retro designs and associations with Fall Fest. However, Bonnie is still really weird in these old tapes, acting disinterested and unique from the other band members. While the glitches in the tapes could come from modern Glitch Trap infecting the older episodes, the weirdness with how Bonnie is characterized would predate the Jeremy Mask incident from Help Wanted 1. Now you could easily disregard this as just a character trope from television, and I think that's likely the case. But what if it wasn't? What if it was meant to tell us that someone important related to Bonnie has been dealing with the Mimic for a lot longer than we thought? What if Cassie's dad is the protagonist of Secret of the Mimic? Think about it. Cassie's dad was very interested in Freddy's earlier in the timeline, and there's a lot of recent connections with keys, Faz wrenches, and hands to Secret of the Mimic. We also see in the Freddy and Friends episodes the band finding a disguised endoskeleton at different places throughout history, with the final one being under a building in a cave. This would also possibly further connect Cassie's dad to Mixes, a large black rabbit avatar for the AR world. From what I've seen online, the three main ideas for the Secret of the Mimic protagonist are Cassie's dad or grandfather, Henry, or someone new. I personally don't believe it'll be Henry, since I don't think someone like Henry would start with a low-level data diver, as it seems to be the case by the posters, and Scott generally doesn't like to give us too much information on Henry or William, especially directly within the games. People argue for Cassie's grandfather, since it would be a bit of a weird age situation with Cassie's dad if he were the Secret of the Mimic protagonist. So maybe instead this Mimic fight is a family matter. However, I am currently split between Cassie's dad or someone new. While I think someone new makes more sense for this time period, I still think the weird Help Wanted 2 and Cassie's dad connections have their own merit. For now, your guess is as good as mine. We'll just have to wait for a second trailer to give us more answers. And there you have it. Another theory, another week closer to Secret of the Mimic. Next week, I plan to tackle one of the longest running debates in the series' history, the book's canonicity. Surely it won't be controversial, right guys? If you guys did enjoy the theory, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. It really helps support the channel and lets me know that you guys want more theories released. And with all that said, this is gonna be Mini Bite Games heading out. See you guys next time!